Okay, we're at the end of lesson 1.25. Here you see the four forms of the test. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take the first form of the test. Let me scroll down to it right now without timing myself. And I'm going to intentionally insert mistakes into my responses. As I say the statement for number one, you're to listen to discern if I have made a mistake in the midst of that sentence. And if so, repeat the word that was incorrectly said and then say the entire statement correctly. I'm not going to ask you to explain what the mistake was like I will. After you provide your response, I'll explain grammatically speaking what the mistake was. I'm not concerned that you can explain grammar. I am deeply concerned that you can express yourself in an increasingly fluent fashion. We'll talk more about that at the end of this lesson. So here we go. Number one, listen to see if you find any mistakes. There may not be any. We'll find out. Yo tengo un mochila. Yo tengo un mochila. Right, you should have said un. Yo tengo una mochila. Now here's the explanation. Mochila is a feminine word. You learned it when you learned it was la mochila. Therefore, you know it's a feminine word. And in the choice to say a backpack, your choice is between un and una is the feminine form, and therefore una mochila is the proper choice. Number two, usted tiene 6 libros. Usted tiene 6 libros. Indicate the word which is incorrect, and then say the statement correctly. All right, well, there was no mistake in that sentence. It was correctly said. Usted tiene 6 libros. Okay, so don't be overly critical. Did I catch you on that one? Let's try number 3. Él tiene una... Let me try that again. Él tiene unas calculadora. Él tiene unas calculadora. Right, I think. Calculadora should be calculadoras in the plural. I didn't add the s to make the word plural. So, él tiene unas calculadoras. Number 4. Usted tiene un silla. Usted tiene un silla. Okay, the problem was with un, wasn't it? Un is the masculine form of the article, and silla is a feminine word, la silla. And you may remember I mentioned the last lesson that in many cases you can hear the ending of the article and the ending of the noun and know that you're on the right track. You've lined them up. Un silla doesn't match. Whereas una silla, the a sound at the end of both of them, assures you that you're on the right track. That you've got the definite article or the indefinite article and the noun lined up properly in the proper form. Él tiene una silla. Okay, this will not always, you cannot always rely upon that method. A word that ends in a consonant, like papel. If you say some papers, and you say unos papeles, you hear the os and the es don't line up. Well, that's because the word ends in a consonant, and there is no option for an indefinite article that ends with the sound es. So that will not always be a perfect means of verifying if you said things correctly, but in many cases you will hear that they will line up correctly. And if you're ever saying os and as, for example, unos casas, you'll know that you're off base. That os and as don't line up. You want to say unas casas, for example. Okay. Next one. Number 5. Él tiene 4 computadoras. Él tiene 4 computadoras. Okay, that was a tricky one because I just talked about this idea of trying to make the ending of the definite or indefinite article line up with the ending of the noun, if possible. And so, cuatras computadoras sounds great, doesn't it? The only problem is cuatro is not an article. It's not an indefinite article or a definite article. It's a number. And therefore, numbers, just like any noun, can't be modified. You don't change their form to make them masculine or feminine. They are what they are. Their identity is what their identity is. The only thing you can do with a noun is to make it plural. And so that really should have been él tiene cuatro computadoras. Let me say that again. Él tiene cuatro computadoras. Cuatro remains cuatro, remains cuatro. It never modifies itself in any way. Okay, next one, number 6. Yo tengo unos pupitres. Yo tengo unos pupitres. Well, hopefully you said that is correct. There's nothing to change there. Unos pupitres may not sound exactly as neatly aligned as you'd like them to sound, but pupitre doesn't end in the sound o or a, and so the ending of the indefinite article, which is either unos or unas, can't perfectly line up with the ending of the of pupitre, and there, or in the plural, pupitres. And therefore, unos pupitres is the proper form, because pupitre is the masculine word. You learn el pupitre, and the plural of the indefinite article in the masculine is unos, not unas. So él tiene unos pupitres. Number 7. Ella tener un marcador. Ella tener un marcador. Right, the problem was with tener. I used the entire infinitive. I didn't conjugate it. I didn't cause it to fit the subject who was doing the action, which is ella. I needed to chop the ending there. So ella tiene, not ella tener. Ella tiene un marcador. Number 8. Ella tiene 3 cuadernos. Ella tiene 3 cuadernos. Number 8. Ella tiene 13 cuadernos. Ella tiene 13 cuadernos. Okay, hopefully you said that's preposterous or something along those lines. You can't change tres. Tres is tres is tres is tres. It's just a number. You can't make it plural or singular. It is what it is. And so ella tiene 3 cuadernos. It's not an article to be modified. It's simply the number 3. All right, number 9. Here we go. Usted tiene unas papeles. Usted, excuse me. Usted tiene unas papeles. Okay, well, hopefully you weren't too hard on me for stumbling over usted, as they pronounced it. That was not the mistake I had in mind. But there were actually 2 mistakes in the sentences, weren't there? I said usted tiene. I didn't perform the stem change, the beginning of tener, how e changes to ye in the conjugated form of the verb tiene. So it's not usted tiene, but usted tiene. And then I said unas papeles. Now papel is a masculine word. You've learned it as el papel. In the plural, of course, it's papeles. We add the extra syllable es to make it plural, papeles, because it ends in a consonant. We can't simply add s and say papels. That's too awkward. So papeles. The problem was with the indefinite article. When I wanted to say some papers, I said unas papeles, and unas is the feminine form of the indefinite article. I wanted unos. So that should read, or should be said, usted tiene unos papeles. And last of all, number 10. Él tiene 6 lápiz. Él tiene 6 lápiz. Okay, this is a little tricky one too. El tiene is fine. 6, of course, it's 6. It's never going to change. So the problem, if there any problem existed, was with lápiz. Was there a problem with lápiz? Is that plural or is that not plural? Right, the way in which I said it, lápiz is not plural. It sounds like it is because it ends in the sound s, lápiz. And so you think, well, I've already made it plural. You haven't. That's the original. That's a singular identity of this word for pencil. Lápiz. El lápiz is what you learn. To make it plural, you need to add the es syllable at the end. Lápices. Lápices. Lápiz is a single pencil. Lápices is plural. So, él tiene 6 lápices. Okay, let me go through the second form of the test now. Here it is. And this time I'm going to time myself. You're simply going to listen. I'm going to try to say these correctly without stumbling. And let's see how long it takes me, if I can finish in less than a minute, because a minute is the period of time I've been allotted. Here we go. Tú tienes 3 mochilas, yo tengo unos libros, ella tiene un celular, ella tiene 10 sillas, usted tiene unas computadoras, usted tiene unos audífonos o un casco, we said either way. Yo tengo 8 marcadores, yo tengo unos cuadernos, tú tienes una pluma, usted tiene unos lápices. Stop. 25 seconds. I made it just under the wire, just under the time limit. Well, how was I able to do that, those exercises, to form those statements there so quickly? I didn't come close to using the 60 seconds that were allotted to me. I'm sure for some of you, 60 seconds seems rather limiting, rather restricting, and more than you could possibly handle at this point. Well, the answer to that question, how, has to do with what I want to see happen in your thought process as well. What I did was, I looked at the pictures on the screen, I got those images into my mind and arranged them in the order of who's performing the action, what is the action, and what remaining information do I need to give in order to complete the thought. And here's what I did not do. I did not think about what that statement meant in English. I did not see printed words corresponding to what that statement meant in English. And I did not think about grammatical explanations or rules. And I merely had the concepts in my mind, and I expressed those concepts, those ideas in the target language. Now, how can you do that? How can you get to that point yourself as well? Well, that'll occur if you cut no corners in the ULET lessons. You do all of the different steps. And when you have a timed activity in particular, you want to always master the section of the lesson that you're working on. If you have a section of the lesson you're working on that's causing you difficulty, keep going back. Keep repeating it. Keep repeating it. Because by the act of repeating a lesson, you're getting the patterns of the language you're learning in your mind, where you don't need to think about grammatical explanations. The patterns are there, and you really can't, you couldn't transgress them, you couldn't go against them even if you wanted to. And this, like I said, is particularly true with timed activities. Like the section just before this video right here, the section where you have a PowerPoint video and you're given a certain amount of time in which to provide the answer, to form the statement before you hear me give you the correct answer. And then as you go along, you have less time, and then less time in which to provide the answer. Those activities, those timed activities, are so valuable because they don't allow you to think in English. They don't allow you the time or the leisure to think in terms of printed text, even if you could. And then thirdly, they don't allow you the time to think in terms of grammatical rules and explanations. You simply have to learn through repetition and repetition the patterns of the language, this language that you're learning. And you're learning in the process. When you respect those time limits, you're learning to speak at an increasingly fluent rate of speed. Okay. Well, let me leave you with one last thought as far as my objectives for you. I would far rather see that you can speak in a fluent fashion. That is to say, that you can respect those time limits that you're given, and yet to speak with some mistakes in your speech. I would far prefer fluent speech with some mistakes than that you try to be absolutely accurate in every element of your speech, but not even come close to respecting the time limits that are imposed on you in these tests and in those PowerPoint videos. You can gradually, over time, work out the imperfections in your speech as you repeat exercises over and over and as you're exposed to this language you're learning as I speak it to you. But one thing you can't do is if you're thinking in the wrong fashion, you're thinking in English, you're thinking in terms of printed words, written words, or if you're thinking in terms of charts and grammatical explanations, that you cannot undo. You will never learn to speak fluently if those are the ways in which you think. Okay? Pursue fluency and gradually refine your speech through repetition and repetition and going back to sections of lessons that are particularly challenging for you until you can respect those time constraints that are laid out there for you. Okay, that's enough philosophizing. I'll see you in lesson 1.26. Time for you now to go back to 125, to master each section, to respect the time limits, and then, of course, to take the test. Practice those four forms of the test first before you try to take it. Okay, I'll see you.